Welcome to the Heroic Voice. I am here today on this is October 4th with Thierry Lancelot live from Prague, uh, comic book writer and entrepreneur. Terry, I would like to just give you a chance today to talk about your projects, whatever you're working on, and tell people why they should be of interest.
Okay,
This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators and other interesting people on a variety of subjects. I am Dennis Maloney, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we feature good girl and bad girl artwork, super babes, and all kinds of Silver Agey style stories.
okay. Thank you very much, Denise, for the opportunity to present myself to your audience. Um, I think I can start maybe by giving you a little bit of insights on myself. Uh, Writing comic books is not my first occupation, but it's my preferred one. It started all, let's say, about 3.5 years ago. Um, I During COVID period, I think I wanted to create a comic book with my son, and so we had a few discussions going on at that time. And he wanted to create some superhero, all the Marvel movie hype being around and influencing him from childhood on. We had a few discussions, came up with an idea, and then we just made a few drawings. I personally am not a drawer, right? I'm a writer. But I found a friend of mine, made some layouts of the characters, and just put it on Facebook. And at that moment, something strange really happened because someone from the Philippines, and his name is Christopher Orpiano, said, "Well, I like the character and I like the story behind what you've just said. If it's okay with you, let me draw a few of your characters." And I said, "Okay, be my guest." And the guy came back, I must say, 2 days later with amazing drawers. And I really invite everybody to go and check out Christopher Orpiano's work on the net. Uh, Christopher was an artist that was working for the Filipino industry
Mhm.
in the late 90s. And a big firm named Atlas Publishing, which was also working with Marvel Comics in the 70s. So and at that moment in the 90s, I think the Philippine industry, comic industry, just collapsed, right?
Yes.
And the guy went on to become a pastor for his local community, but he never forget drawing. He always did drawing on the side, and so I think my story with my young son just inspired him to make the characters, and that's the original creation of the Orb universe, right? And the Orb universe started with the creation of three superheroes banding together, quite classical as a first story arc, but it got some traction along the way, right? And so he said, why not make a comic book out of this? Let's do it, right? We can have a Kickstarter kind of fund request, and let's try to get it out there. So we did our best, of course, to do that. He drew me 20 pages on an original, quite simple script, I must say. So there's nothing out of the extraordinary, but it caught the attraction of a French publisher, right?
Mm.
And so that publisher was Original Watts, and it's a little bit kind of a personal story at that moment because Original Watts is a publishing company that bought the rights to very early comic books of the late 80s that I collected as a young guy. And one of these comic books is Special Strange. It's kind of an anthology book where you had multiple series focusing on American material. To be very honest, and it just have to happen. Kind of the first cover just right here, number one of the late 1975, by the way. Um, and so I said to myself, this is just unbelievable, right? So I'm writing a story, and then Original Watts, which now happens to want to continue the Special Strange anthology 30, 40 years later, they just contacted me and said, look, we are looking for writers and artists and people want to get out there. Why not publish The Orb in Special Strange? And for me, it came a little bit kind of a full circle story. Right? You collect as a kid, and then at some moment in time, you get the opportunity to just contribute to the new iteration of the book. So
Interesting. Yeah. Is this connected in any way with the interest that you've expressed in Eternity Smith?
I've always been quite interested in the late 80s comic books of any publisher, right? And at that moment, I think what preoccupies me more is not so much creating my own material because I can almost say it's easy. It's easy. With the passing of time, I've surrounded myself with some good artists, and I've created my own publishing company, which is Tall Comics, and it does work quite nicely. But when Special Strange was being bought up by another publishing because the rights were just going public, um, I think Original Watts wanted to create a new anthology. And to me, I wanted to get back to the original spirit of why the publisher of the 80s really did their book. It was to present stories that nobody knew on the French market. At that time, it was, of course, the US Golden Age Spider-Man and Marvel Comics books. But today, what we are really missing is all of those precious gems of the late 80s that have never got European attention. Right? And I pass a few of my evenings just going on Indie Planet and looking at all of those republishing serials or series from the late 80s. And Eternity Smith, that really caught my attention, but both in terms of art, professionalism, coloring, it has that specific, it has that vibe, I would say timeless vibe that I think of French readers of that time are really looking forward to. And when the rights to Special Strange just came into public service, we said, now this is maybe the time to go back to the roots of why that book was created at the first time, and then let's create our own anthology. And let's do it the same way they've done it in the 80s. Let's try to find those series that are a blend of nostalgia, but also with very good, strong writing, and that today deserves more attention. So we said, okay, I'm going to look for a few series, and I came on to Eternity Smith. So I'm very excited to prepare that number one for that new anthology, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a minute.
Well, we'll need to. I still haven't heard from Rick about the agreement that you offered. I'll prod him again and see if we can get this worked out. Um, so, what else do you have?
Well,
I would not. I don't
well,
really want to make this a conversation about Eternity Smith. I really want it to be a conversation about what you do. Um, so, what else are you working on, or do we need to go into the new book at this point?
maybe let me start a little bit by telling what I'm doing on the side, and then I'll come back
Okay.
to the new anthology. Right. So, um, Tall Comics created 3 years ago. So now we have multiple series, two very good ones that got, I think, quite some audience traction. The Orb, of course, which is starting to become expanded to a real universe, and it created multiple characters, all coming back into one single book, right? And that's called The Orb. And then there is another series that was created for the French market, very specifically, which is called Atlant, Man of the Deep. Um, and that series was created with another Filipino artist, which is Rodel Nora, published in Special Strange, but also in a hardcover series very lately, which is it's a classical take on your hero in the depth of the ocean. But I didn't want to create a story like your Aquaman or any other person that was breathing underwater. And I really wanted to create something that was also anchored into my own personal story roots. And so we went with the family, we went on vacation a few years ago in Santorini, And maybe you know the story about that island, but part of that island just dropped into the ocean
Mhm.
so many millennia ago. And so I took that as a starting point of what would happen if they survived below the ocean, but they were just normal human beings being helped by a race of extraterrestrials. And so it's a mix of um, I would say old school comic writing, but also with kind of a modern twist to your classical undersea heroes, and that got quite a level of success, I must say. Um, Now, if I come back just a second to the orb, I want to mention that something that great had happened 1 year ago, which was the orb was granted a prize, and I have it here just in front of me, but it's quite heavy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Heroic Awards.
No?
Heroic Awards were it it was created by 150 independent comic book companies in the US, and the first iteration of that was in the Chicago Comic Convention, and you could just bring your books in, and then it was evaluated by a cohort of editors and artists and writers, and we were granted the first prize for the orb, which was 1 year ago. Nice.
Well,
That got us
wonderful.
quite some US attention. I must say.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I think with all of that hype happening, it's very difficult to maintain focus, right, and make sure that you just keep on publishing all of these series at the same time. So I think the pace of the orb is slowing maybe a little bit down. We have 6 issues for the time being. Atlant is finished with his first story arc. Um, and now the focus will be more on Mystic, which is the new anthology created by Original Ones. And I think that's a little bit my brainchild for the time being. We are going to start the fundraiser on the 22nd of October, and I'll make sure that you get the link to that book.
Be happy to
Um,
put it in. And that is where Eternity Smith is going to appear.
yeah, absolutely. Among
Okay.
among other series,
Yes.
because I think he will be close followed with another story called Astron, the Star Soldier,
Mhm.
which is also a vintage comic book series that was never published, on top of having two French series that will also be included into the anthology. Um, and so we are going to kick that off end of October, and then let's see where that piece of the story will bring us.
Wonderful. Um, so you're licensing basically the material that appeared in the trade paperback, which is the first 6 issues, right? So that's going to run across the first 6 issues of Mystic.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
very good. Very good. Okay. What's coming up after that? You said there are 6 issues of The Orb. I assume there's a seventh issue in the works. Yes.
Yeah. I think the brain never stops, right? I think it just continues, and you need to write down all of those stories as fast as they come up. Um, yeah, I think the orb is a little bit the brainchild. I will continue to produce stories for those characters as we move along, and we always try to target 4 numbers a year, which is, I believe, quite good. 22 pages each issue, 4 issues a year. When you're self-publishing, I think it takes quite some time just to make sure that you cover all the different angles. And I've learned a lot along the way over the past 3 years, but it's still, you need to make sure that you're surrounded by the right people, right? You need to have a
Yeah.
strong inker, you need to have a strong letterer, you need to have a good artist, and then some good cover artists that also can attract people to the books. So I think we're now in a place where we have a good team of people surrounding, um, and then it's all about raising money, funding all of
Sure.
that, because I think, as you might know, it's sometimes the hardest thing, right? You can be creative, but if money is not in the bank, you will
Yes,
not be able to
absolutely.
publish out there.
I take it that you've had some degree of success with your fundraising efforts.
We are quite successful. I think what What's nice maybe in our endeavor is that we have a book that targets the nostalgic people of the 80s and the 90s, and then we are targeting the young generation with more different storylines. And so it's trying to find a blend of series into one anthology that really speaks to both generations. And that's maybe until now, I would say the reason of success. Every campaign, Original Watts, has been issued, has been quite successful. Um, and of course, we are not only republishing old material, we are also looking at expanding with new stories, right? So I'm currently working on a two-parter called Chronos, Order and Chaos, which is the revamp of a 1980s character by a French artist called Jean-Yves Mitton. And maybe some of your listeners know his name, but the guy created almost every French superhero character between the 1980s and the 1990s. Um, uh, I think he's over 85 now, still alive and kicking. Um, but a few months back, I said I would love to continue one of your characters that you did in the 80s, and it was very difficult to let go. I think when you create characters, you want the best for them, right?
Hmm.
And and he didn't want to let loose. He wanted to make sure that this was the right artist. It took quite some months to convince him, and quite some drawings and different artists, so that he would agree to continue that work,
Yeah,
which we will now be publishing.
Rick Hoberg and I actually went through that at one point with a creative team that wanted to do new Eternity Smith stories. Um, they finally persuaded us to give them the license to do it, but then they never followed up on it. So, there's when it's your baby, you want the baby to be treated well, right? But you also want the baby to, continue on. So it's difficult sometimes. Yeah. So,
Nowadays.
alrighty.
Well, anything else for me to tell?
If those are your projects, then I think we have covered it. Let me pose the question to you. Is there anything that you would like to add? Any cogent advice that you would like to give to people?
Well, I think do it right. If it's one word, I to all creators out there, it's a very competitive environment, um, but fundraising on the internet has allowed a lot of amazing creations coming out
Yes.
there,
Yes.
and I'm a very big fan of the big comic companies, but I'm evenly stronger attracted to all of those amazing new stories that you can find on fundraisers. So my plea to our audience is have an open mind, go out there and look those books up, right?
Well,
And if
let
you
me
are
phrase it a little differently, right? As you say, there are a lot of wonderful projects on there. Go to Kickstarter, to Indiegogo, to all of the fundraising platforms, and look for things that look interesting to you and support them. I mean, that's what the creators need. That's how the books get created. These days, there's more going on than just the big publishers. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and it needs your
absolutely,
help.
they do.
All right. Terry, I want to thank you for this. I'll try to get that contract taken care of and to you so that, all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed and you can actually get Smith out there. The fundraiser begins, you said, on October 22nd. How
Correct.
long do you plan for it to run?
So 24 days in
24
general. That's
days.
a little bit what the campaign we are covering. Just want to say to your listeners, it's of course a French publication, right? I think it will be swell, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of copies your way, so you can show them around. Um, but with nowadays, language doesn't matter, right? You
No.
can read any comic in any language
Yeah.
if you're
And if you
willing.
need to translate it, there are translators out there.
Yes, absolutely.
So, all right. Terry, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I want to encourage people as always, if you like this interview, hit the like button, share it, and subscribe because subscriptions are the only way that we can grow the heroic voice. All right. Have a wonderful weekend and thank you again.
Thank you. Cheers, Dennis. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.